Welcome to the Ohio Computer-Based Assessment Tutorials. This tutorial will focus on the Physical Science End of Course exam for the end of year. We have another tutorial for the Performance-Based Assessment, but this tutorial will address the end of year, end of course exam for Physical Science. We're starting at the Ohio Computer-Based Assessment portal page, which is oh.portal.airast.org/OCBA, and then we will just click Practice Test. That will take us to a login screen where we will log in as a guest. We will select 9th or 10th grade because all of the end of course exams are in those grade levels. And then we will select the Physical Science End of Year exam. You'll notice here's the PBA. We did a previous tutorial over that. We've split those because of the differences in the questions between the end of year and the PBA. The PBA has some more in-depth types of questions and stimulus than the end of year, so we kind of separated this tutorial out. So we will go ahead and start the end of year. The end of year exam is given in late April, early May. The PBA was be given at the beginning of March. So we will confirm all of the instructions. These are the instructions and the different tools that are available for this test, and then we'll begin the test. This takes you to the interface that the student will see when they take the test. You'll notice at the top we have some navigation buttons. Those are the same in all of the different tests. You see the forward and backward, pause, end test. For the physical science, there are some additional tools available to the student. There's a periodic table that allows them to see the actual periodic table and all the information that it includes. There's also a formula or reference sheet for the high school so that they have access to some formulas. They don't have to memorize different formulas and equations. Then there's a scientific calculator that they can use to answer any of the questions that they might encounter on any of the end of course exam for physical science. And then, like the other social studies or the American history or American government end of course exam, there is a note pad where they can type their notes, save them, and then go back and look at them. There is a line reader that allows them to track their line of reading a little bit better for those kids that might have a tracking issue. And then, of course, we have the zoom in and the zoom out buttons that allows students with visual impairments to kind of increase the size of the text. So the end of course exam has a lot of multiple choice questions because it is what we call computer scored or machine scored. So most of the questions that you will see on the end of year exam are questions that have a right or wrong answer, or that can be scored very objectively. There's a few short answer questions on the end of year exam, but not very many extended response that takes some type of hand scoring from a human. So for the sake of time in the tutorial, I'm not going to go over any of the multiple choice questions because obviously those are familiar to most students and teachers. Here's an example of one that it really isn't much different in terms of a multiple choice, but it does have a lot of things going on, and it also demonstrates another piece that students have to kind of get familiar with a computerized test, and that is the ability to scroll. You'll notice that depending on the size of the window that's open, to get to all of those parts, they have to scroll to the part B. And then part B does have a different type of question that's different from the multiple choice question that students typically see. This is a multiple select question where they have to select all of the choices that support the distribution of galaxies. So they can select multiple answers. They could actually select them all, but they have to select the ones that are appropriate. And it doesn't tell them how many, it just says all. So that is, again, a different type of question than what students are probably familiar with. Here's another example of a technology enhanced item. It's a drag and drop where they will just drag the boxes into the correct box on the diagram based on the graph that they're analyzing and how it's labeled, and they're looking at which ones have the most magnitude, and they have to put them in order from increasing magnitude. So the students really have to understand the concept of speed versus time and being able to read a graph to do this type of task. So that's an example of a drag and drop. Multiple choice question. Here's another example of a different type of technology enhanced question. So we have some information up here dealing with sound waves from speakers and some points, and then they're asked to identify the relative volume at each point. So based on their understanding and knowledge of sound waves, they would then put what volume that each point would have. And again, I'm not going to worry about the correct answer. I'm just selecting the answer so you can see how it's done. You notice that you can change your selection, but it only allows you to do one for this one. So that's again a selected response. Here's a short answer where they would just type their answer with the keyboard based on the information above that. Multiple choice. Here's an example of a question that has a lot of things going on that students really have to kind of take their time and understand what they're being asked to do. So they explain that the student has to place the bond type that is formed by the sharing electrons in the blank box. So they either are going to put ionic or covalent here, and then they place the symbol of each particle in the box. So they may put lithium, and they might put chlorine, and then they have to put whatever they share. Now, there may be more than one answer. So again, this is not probably correct. I'm just dragging and dropping. But they need to pay attention to some of the notes down here that says they don't need to use all of them, and they can use something more than once. And the biggest piece is there's more than one correct answer. So they may put some things here that will cause them to have a correct answer that may be different from another student based on what they're demonstrating in terms of knowing how the electrons are being shared or transferred. So the students really have to have a strong understanding of ionic and covalent bonds and what type of atoms utilize those type of bonds to demonstrate their understanding in this type of scenario. So this is one that students really need to become familiar with. Here again is a multiple select response where the students have to just select as many as they think is appropriate. Another example of a question, it's a drag and drop, but it also involves a lot of different variables. It's similar to the other question we just looked at that says there's more than one correct answer. So they can drag this to create an equation. And again, I'm not taking any time to know whether it's correct or not. The other thing that students need to understand is how to navigate the delete. If they click on the delete and then come down and click on the object, it is deleted. and then they can replace it with something else. So these are just things that students have to learn how to navigate. That's why I would suggest that students at least engage in this practice test prior to taking the computerized assessment. Here's where they will order from 1 to 5. The first stars form, first atoms form. So there's events here that happened during the Big Bang, and then they have to put the numbers, and again I'm just putting in numbers at random, but that again is different than probably what they've typically done on other paper and pencil tests for the state test. Here they are calculating the car's final velocity, and then they have to enter the number in the box based on using the keyboard here, multiple choice. So that's all the questions in this practice test, but you'll notice that there are several different types of questions. Once they're done, they end the test. They say yes, it'll come up and it'll show them questions that they did not answer with an explanation point, and they can go back and click on that question and go back and actually answer the question then that they did not answer the first time. It's important that teachers or test proctors understand that they don't allow students to submit the test until all of the questions are submitted completely and in full, because once they submit and click yes, they log out and they cannot go back in and change any answers. So that has been the tutorial over the physical science end of course exam end of year section. Check out the other tutorials for the other end of course exams and other computerized test platforms for the Ohio online testing.